So for me, the difference between yawning versus aiming, and I think it's line 9, is aiming to me has a lot more intentionality, at least sort of on first pass, than yawning does, right? If you're aiming at something, you're actively pursuing it. So if the courtiers are aiming at, or sort of actively pursuing, actively trying to unpack Ophelia's speech, and then subsequently botching the words up to fit their own thoughts, right? They're sort of reaching out for the sense of whatever it is she's saying, and then trying to sort of parse it or trying to assemble it into some order that makes sense to them, but also potentially reveals their own thoughts. If they're yawning at it, the preposition at is difficult there, right? To yawn at something is always, it's a little bit of confusing linguistic order there. But I will say that to yawn at something is sort of a, well, if we think about it as like a bodily gesture, right? It's involuntary, first of all. It's a bodily expression that maybe can't be controlled and certainly doesn't express the same kind of control that aim does. But it also, a yawning abyss, right, is something is large and sort of can incorporate everything, can be all-encompassing, and can have sort of an unpredicted variety fall into it. So I think for the courtiers to yawn at Ophelia's language and then botch up the words to fit their own thoughts is for them to sort of open an abyss into which her speech can fall, but it's an uncontrollable action ultimately. So I think if we're going to read that line, there's a pretty big divide between what it would mean for them to aim at her speech and what it would mean for them to yawn at it. In some ways, to me, yawn actually makes more sense, despite the preposition at. That's the one part that sort of sticks. But otherwise, I think yawn makes more sense in that it reflects the ongoing sort of instability of people trying to grasp onto and deal with Ophelia's speech and trying to impose order on something that doesn't necessarily easily yield to that. I don't know that it follows there that there's no sense or no thought in what she's saying, but it does certainly defy order. Although I suppose you could aim at something and fall short, so maybe either way.